Did we check this bit before? Yeah. Hello, people of YouTube. Oh, I'm looking here. Okay. Today we're going to do a little live stream. I'm going to start by discussing ways to patch the 3-tier Mother-32 ecosystem, and then we'll move on to just me playing a little bit of music. But I want to start by just explaining how I'm going to build up the patch. So I'm going to use a Roland TR-606 drum machine, and that's going to clock my whole patch. If you look on this TR-606, it says trigger out here up on the top, and there's an LT and HT, which stand for the low tom and high tom channels on the 606. I'm going to start by patching the low tom into the DFAM's advanced clock input. And then I'm going to take the high tom, and I'm going to patch it into my modular in the center section, which is going to give me a multiple. So I'm going to get multiple copies of this clock once I hit play. So now if I hit play on the 606, and I go into write mode, I can make sure that my low tom channel has 16th notes, my high tom channel has 16th notes, and I can see in my modular, all of these green LEDs are showing me my clock rate. I'm going to use the Moog, Subharmonicon, DFAM, and Mother-32 for all of my sound sources other than the 606. And what I'm going to use the modular to do is add modulation, sequencing, and just sort of spice up what these instruments can do on their own. So I'm going to patch the clock into my sequencer here, and we can see it start moving. I'm going to use a delay, and I'm also going to patch the clock into the delay so that it's synced. I am going to take the Subharmonicon's VCA output, and I'm going to patch it into a high-pass filter that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to patch the high-pass filter out into this delay. This is a Forumus DLD, which is a really lovely delay. I have an alternate firmware on it, so I need to patch it slightly differently than normal. There's a send and return here, and so I'm going to use these two filters that I have on either side of the DLD to filter my delayed signal. And I'm going to send the send into the input, and then I'm going to take the bandpass output and go to the return and do the exact same thing on the other side. And now I'm going to patch both sides of the delay into a reverb. And I'm going to patch my reverb out to the main output here, which is just a line level output. So now you can hear the Subharmonicon. I have it tuned really, really low at the moment because we're going to use the sequencer to offset some voltages. So now I'm going to set up the Subharmonicon to be controlled from this sequencer. So I'm going to take the gate output from the sequencer, and I'm going to patch it to the trigger input on the Subharmonicon. And then I'm going to take the voltage output from the sequencer and go to my volt per octave input on VCO1. And I'm going to then take the second channel of my sequencer, and I'm going to take the CV output of that and go into VCO2. So now if I bring up the volume on my 606, you can hear a little pattern. And this sequencer lets me play live into it so I can input notes on the fly. And I'm just going to show you how that sounds with the Subharmonicon to begin. Program another pattern on the second channel. One thing to take note of is because the subharmonicon is paraphonic, it means that both of my melodies will need to occur within the same rhythmic structure. So my oscillator 2 is going to have a melody that's going to exist inside of the enveloping that's happening on oscillator 1. It sounds a little complicated, but I'm going to show you what that sounds like. You can hear I have two melodies happening, and if I extend my VCA decay, I'll hear more of the second oscillator's melody. Now I have a way to control the subharmonicon melodically. I want to keep going a little bit and add some modulation to the sound. So what I'm going to do is take an LFO. I have this module here, which actually gives me 8 LFOs that are kind of spaced out from fast to slow. And they're not in sync with each other, but they're just spaced at really nice musical intervals to give me these relating patterns. I'm going to take that and I'm going to patch it into an attenuator. And then I'm going to take the attenuator out and I'm going to go into VCO1's pulse width modulation. Let's listen to just oscillator 1. I'm going to hit play again. Make sure it's on a square wave. And now you'll hear the pulse width modulation when I turn this knob up. Makes it sound, I don't know, a little bit more aggressive once you have pulse width modulation happening. Another thing that I'm going to do is modulate the filter a little bit. And to do this, I'm going to go back a step in the patch a little bit. I'm going to take the gate output from channel 1 and I'm going to feed it into another channel of my multiple. And so now, if I hit play, you can see that the red is lighting up according to my gate pattern. So now what I'm going to do is use that to do sample and hold. So I'm going to take that gate pattern and I'm going to patch it into 2 different things. The first is just a simple envelope because I want to eliminate the sustains or the gate length from the sequencer. So I'm just going to use a really, really short envelope that's triggered from the gate, but therefore I can avoid the sustain. And then next, I'm going to take another channel of my multiple, and I'm going to feed it into the gate input here. And now I'm going to have a sample and hold. And I'm going to feed another LFO into the sample and hold's input. And I'm going to take the output, and I'm going to feed it into the cutoff jack on the subharmonicon. So now we can listen to how this sounds, and we'll have a little bit more filter modulation occurring. It sounds a little more dramatic than I'd like. I'm going to feed it into another attenuator so that I can control the strength of that filter modulation. So for now, that's how I'm going to set up my patching on the Subharmonicon. Next, I'm going to look at the DFAM. So I'm going to pull the 606 volume down and hit play. I'm going to turn the Subharmonicon down, and now I'm going to hit play on the DFAM. To tell you what I'm doing here, I'm going to use VCO2 as my main sound source, and I'm going to set the sequencer row, the pitch row up here, to only control oscillator 2. And then I'm going to use FM to get this kind of dissonant metallic sound out of just VCO2, because I can adjust VCO1's frequency and get these nice relationships between the two oscillators until I'm happy with the sound. I think this is a nice sound. What I'm going to do next is set up another sample and hold. So I'm going to take another one of these green blinking jacks, which is my clock signal, and I'm going to use this module again to generate a sample and hold that's going to be clocked by the master clock. Now you can see this little LED is blinking to let me know it's received the clock. I need to feed something in to get it to sample, and I am going to use a channel of my sequencer and turn it into a LFO that will operate at random. So I'm pretty much just making a random signal here that's operating from 0 to 5 volts. And then I'm going to patch that output into the VCF mod on the DFAM. So now if we listen, and I introduce some of our modulation here, you can hear that the pattern is changing a little bit as it repeats instead of just following the same pattern over and over. There's a little bit of a dynamic change that's randomly occurring. And if I bring my 606 back in, so now you can hear I can get this nice, interesting pattern on the DFAM. One other thing I'm going to do is take another LFO. I'm going to feed it into an attenuator. And then I'm going to feed that into the noise level. So now, as it plays, slowly bringing noise in and out. I'm going to maybe move to a slightly faster LFO. So that's how I'm going to set up the DFAM. And lastly, let's set up the Mother-32. I'm going to take another channel of my sequencer. So now the third channel, I'm going to patch the gate into the gate input on the Mother. And I'm going to patch the voltage into the volt per octave input. I'm going to patch the gate output into another sample and hold channel. So now anytime a gate is made on the Mother-32, it's going to trigger a sample and hold that's once again going to sample a voltage This time I'm going to take a faster LFO. And that is going to get patched into the filter of the Mother-32. So the VCF cutoff. And then I'm going to make a very fast envelope. And I'm going to trigger it from the 4th channel on my sequencer. And I'm going to patch that output into the mix input, mix 2 on this VC mix on the Mother-32. And then the VC mix is going to go out into the resonance of the Mother-32. And that way I'll be able to make a little pattern that will make the resonance kind of peak at certain moments. So let's listen to how that sounds. I'm going to play the 606 again. And I'm going to program a sequence on the Mother-32 now in the sequencer. I'm hearing that I actually want to make my filter modulation a little bit more subtle. So I'm going to run it again into an attenuator and then feed that attenuator back into my cutoff. So now I just have a control to determine how strong of an effect that filter will get modulated. Okay, so now I pretty much have my patch set up exactly how I want it. One last thing I'm going to do is patch my clock output into the Subharmonicon so that I can use its sequencer to do other things than be the main sequencer. It's going to be auxiliary sequencing. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I listen to my pattern that I have on the Subharmonicon again, so now I have sequencer 1 set to be controlled by rhythm 1, but I'm not actually using the sequencer. And yet, if you look up here, I have the sequencer steps set up here so that this is an octave above step 1, this is a fifth above step 2, and this is an octave below step 3. And so while the pattern is playing, I can use this next button to just manually transpose the sequence to the interval that I want. So if we listen, there's an octave up, and there's a fifth above that. There's an octave below that. And then we move back down a fifth to our root. I've set that up to be a nice little performative feature. And the Mother-32 sequencer is actually going to do something similar, where if I listen to this, I can now use this sequencer, or the keyboard here, to transpose my sequences. So that's just a nice way to manually control it all. So now I'm going to stop talking and just make a few little patches, play, and you can hear how all of this will sound together now that you understand, or hopefully understand, how it's been set up to function. So yeah, that's that. You get a sense of the flexibility that I have once I start incorporating modular into the Mother-32 ecosystem. And that's not to say that you can't make a lot of very flexible stuff with the Mother-32 ecosystem, but I just wanted to show examples of patching with Eurorack included. I'm going to answer some of the questions that you guys were asking during the chat. The first one is, I have two mothers, not sure if to get a DFAM or Subharmonicon. Thoughts? I think it kind of depends on what you want to do. If you want more dissonant or rhythmic focused or like experimental sounds, I think that the DFAM is well suited to that. But if you want to explore more like chordal content and harmonization with the Mother-32, the Subharmonicon is probably more well suited to that. So it kind of just comes down to preference. I don't think one is better than the other to pair with the Mother. They're both great, no matter what. Is there a pitch CV out on the Subharmonicon? Would be nice to have the quantized pitch shared with other voices. Yes, there are two pitch outputs. Sequencer 1 and sequencer 2 both output quantized voltages that are the same as the sequencer. And you can also decouple them and make them operate at plus or minus 5 volts if this is, say, operating at plus or minus 1 or 2. And you can make them unquantized while the internal operation is quantized. So the two CV outs on the Subharmonicon are nice and flexible and definitely fun to patch to other instruments or cross-patch within the one instrument. So the next one is, any special knowledge required in interfacing input and output voltages between Mother-32 Subharmonicon to external Eurorack gear? One important thing to keep in mind with Eurorack is you're talking a lot about voltage ranges, and that would be the only thing to keep in mind. The Mother-32, the DFAM, and the Subharmonicon are mainly expecting bipolar voltages, meaning they will take negative or positive voltages. So you can go on either side of 0. And there's a lot of things in Eurorack that are unipolar, meaning they'll just go from 0 upwards and not do negative voltages. So sometimes that's the sort of thing where you might need to process the voltages by adding offset so that the ranges coincide. But in general, no, they're very patchable, both Mother-32 into Eurorack and Eurorack back into Mother-32. And the Subharmonicon as well. The same goes for all 3 units. Do I play any other instruments? No. I went to school for composition, but I've never felt myself to be a particularly good instrument player. I don't like relying on my body. I much prefer sequencers because I can think about things that are much more complex than I'm able to play physically. So, so yeah, I don't play very many instruments. I played guitar and clarinet and piano growing up, but none of them really stuck. I'm much more of a synthesizer and sequencer kind of person. And yeah, I don't think we have any more questions waiting, so we'll wrap things up. I hope that this was informative for the people watching, and yeah. If you have any other questions, you can try to reach out to us at Moog, and we'll do our best to help. And we've been making a lot of demo library videos, so if you have any requests for things you'd like to learn in the demo library, we'll do our best to make new content to try to teach whatever you're wanting to learn. OK, and yeah, you can go to moogmusic.com for the chat. Oh, wait, sorry. Does the MIDI interface expose the same functionality as the CV patch bay slots? I don't totally know what you mean. Like, you can control it via MIDI or CV in the same sort of way. CV gate is just an older style of MIDI. So MIDI is essentially like a digital CV gate where you don't need to patch them all separately. It handles all that information in one single stream. But you can do similar methods of control, but you can control more things with voltage than you can with MIDI just because of the patch bays being there. But in general, yes, CV, gate, MIDI are similar. OK, and yeah, so that's it. And we will see you next time we do a live stream. And have a good day, everybody. Bye.